Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento. And if you don't want to talk about cybersecurity or you don't want to think about cybersecurity, well, it doesn't matter because you have to. We are all forced to think about it, not only in our businesses, not only in our personal lives, but especially in this modern day that we're in with technology moving as quickly as it can. But I promise you, we're going to make it entertaining, and you're also going to get into the mind of a fellow entrepreneur while doing so, because we have got an incredible guest for you today. His name is Erik Barnett. To tell you a little bit about Erik, I love the way that he crafted his bio for me to begin my research ahead of today's episode, because as he says in his own words, he picks up people's emotions off the floor after they suffer a technology breach. Now, obviously, our goal is to not suffer from a technology breach, but that is a very ambitious goal that is probably a little bit impossible. So that is why Erik is the inventor and founder of his company called HomeSirens, which is a cybersecurity engineer in a box with managed services where they do the internet security for you. They know that you don't care or really want to care for cybersecurity, but I promise you, when you hear from Erik, you'll see that his deep love for technology, his deep love for cybersecurity, and understanding of people, which is a rare combination in his industry, is a really important asset that he brings when it comes to protecting all of us from real life threats that every single one of us faces and that we probably ignore until it's too late. So that's why I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Erik Barnett. All right, Erik, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the intro, and I appreciate the talking to everybody about something that they really don't want to care about, and I totally get it.
Heck yeah. Well, I will say, Erik, I obviously interview a lot of entrepreneurs. You are a rare one that's joining me in the standing desk phenomena for today's interview. I feel like we just have more energy because we're standing, and I love that. You obviously bring a lot of energy. So let's start with you. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Erik? How did you start doing all these cool things?
Ooh, that's a good one. Honestly, I've always just been a curious person, and just in general, I've always had a creative knack just to build things just on the fly. And I thought I got myself into the technology world when I was really young. I had my grandpa used to work for Johnson & Johnson Controls, used to have a computer, and he used to have 3D chess. And so when I go visit him in Ohio from Florida, I would play on his computer and play 3D chess, and I had to run some batch commands and everything else. So really, computers were kind of introduced to me really, really early. Then I really picked up a love for it after watching a movie premiere of the movie Hackers. This was pretty much when nobody was kind of known for that standpoint. In the movie Hackers, I would have to say, in the first 10 to 15 seconds of that movie, it talks about the intro and it looks at how the world is from New York City and how the cars are driving and how the streets were formulated. But then all suddenly it starts to pan out from the top and basically transition the city into almost a circuit board. You start seeing these data flows start going from left to right and spin. And honestly, it was just at that moment I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then to start to get into the craziness of what hackers could actually do behind the scenes when it relates to technology, how easy it is to touch people that now you wouldn't be able to touch before technology. I mean, you actually had to go to somebody's house, 40, 50 years ago, drive, but no more. I can touch anybody, anywhere in a split second. And to me, that was just the love and the passion. And from that point on, I was hooked.
Yeah, I love that overview. I'm going to call this out really early on in our interview, Erik, is that I think about all my friends who have different jobs, and I'll pick on nurses, for example. I've got a friend from home who is a labor and delivery nurse, and anytime I see on her social media or anytime I catch up with her, she always talks about how everybody is having babies. And I'm just like, well, of course she thinks that because that's where she works. But it's fascinating to me because you work in cybersecurity and you deal with cybersecurity issues and businesses and people all day long. Yet at the same time, you have the open recognition and awareness to understand that most people don't want to think about it. I feel like it's such an interesting lens that you have through both, is that you work in it, but you also know how much other people don't want to be working in it. Where does that come from?
It really just comes from just understanding this how busy people are in general, to be totally upfront. And to add on to that, we're constantly advertised by everything from a medium perspective, from radio to television to whatever. I mean, you have planes flying with signs for Pete's sake. So it's just knowing that everybody's so busy, and that to think about another thing, it's really hard to do. But then to understand honestly, and comes from just working in cybersecurity, working on some serious bad things, even from the Department of Defense, which I'm a former U.S. Marine, so I've seen some other interesting things as well. It's come to realizations like, look, I think people need help, and in some cases, it's up to us, like the nurses, to be professionals, to learn what it takes to help these people out and to provide that as a service, because honestly, it's just the right thing to do. And it's almost like as a principle to say, if I have the ability to help somebody, why wouldn't I? So if I have the ability to come up with a technology that you can plug in your house, 3 cables, power it up, walk away, and now somebody can manage the whole entire solution for you top to bottom. And if you want to put in a web block for your kid who's on Snapchat at 12 o'clock at night, great, just send me a text and it'll be applied to your box and you can call it a day. I mean, I think that's where the beauty comes in, where I think that it becomes helpful. And I think people become more receptive of those situations, because now they say, okay, well, yes, you realize I'm busy. You're providing me something that will help me to keep on being busy. And plus, too, even when I work in this field, I hate to say this, a lot of us in technology really are overburdened and overrun by various scenarios. So you do see a lot of burnout in the industry. And so even realizing the burnout in the industry, you can only imagine what's happening, just as regular everyday people. And then, of course, I just add in the fact, too, I've worked in enterprises, and I've worked as a consultant for Fortune 500, Fortune 100, Fortune 10, and so forth. And I realized that while they have great, things that helps them out, but what about the common person? What about the person who's really just too busy, just trying to make everything just, stay the same from paycheck to paycheck or from week to week? What do they have? And as of right now, I always felt like they don't have much of anything. And the stuff that they do have is still on them. And to expect a person to add something else, which is still serious, it's just not going to happen. And that's where I'm like, you know what? Let's do this. Let's break the barrier, and let's say, hey, let's provide those services down to a consumer, down to a person at a home who has a lot of different technologies, a smart TV, a Nest, a Google Ring, or whatever the case might be, smart lights on the ceiling. I got an oven that has Wi-Fi. It's crazy. I mean, so these are the things that are coming in. So I feel like the time is now to try to help that common person out, and this is where I come from.
Yeah, I love that. Well, then I feel like you and I are both teasing HomeSirens at the very top of today's episode. So you've got to paint that picture for listeners who aren't familiar with HomeSirens. I love even the way you articulate it. It's so simple. A cybersecurity engineer in a box. Erik, what does that look like? How the heck do we have a cybersecurity engineer in a box in our houses?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So we have this little box right here, and honestly, it's a full-fledged computer, right? And inside this computer is a HomeSirens. It's an embedded AI security solution. Now, on the back side of this little box, it has 2 little Ethernet ports and a power port. So what happens is you take your internet cable from your Wi-Fi router, take it out, and you plug it into this guy, to the outside port. Then you take a new Wi-Fi cable, plug it into the remaining port, and plug it back into your Wi-Fi router. Once you do that, then you can turn this bad boy around. You can hit power. Once you hit power, you walk away. The box is designed to auto-config and connect your internet to your Wi-Fi router, and this now becomes the man in the middle. Now, with this becoming the man in the middle, it has a firewall, IDS, IPS, so many security analytics in an AI engine that can auto-write rules on the fly and block traffic. So anything that's trying to come to your house is automatically protected by HomeSirens.
Yeah, that is such a cool overview. And listeners, just so you know, Erik and I can obviously see each other. If you hop on over to our website, you're going to see this full video and go about 9 minutes in, and you're going to see the box in real time. Erik, I love the way that you illustrate it as that middleman. And I even seeing the size of it, I actually didn't even picture it. It's smaller than your iPhone, which is unbelievable. Talk to us about the tech in there, because obviously when it comes to cybersecurity, part of it is, we always have that phrase in English of being dangerous enough. I know enough to be dangerous. How much do we as end consumers how much should we understand about the underlying technology versus what is that technology that is protecting us so we have that peace of mind along the way?
Yeah, I think the understanding is honestly very significant. You really do need to understand what it is that you're buying. Like for an example, like I would love to tell you that your Wi-Fi router has enough power and enough hardware inside of it that you can put a great security solution on top of it. It doesn't. Okay, it just doesn't. I don't know what to do. It just doesn't, because if you look at the hardware and if you look at those details, it's going to tell you it's a minimal box. Yes, you paid $179 for it. I know what you're thinking, but that's what it comes down to. So when you start to look at these security solutions, it's really trying to understand exactly what are they doing with your data? How are they managing it? How are they allowing you to see the transparency behind it? So where I come from, because a lot of that is the main conversations that enterprises and CIOs and CISOs, they have these conversations all day long. So I said, you know what? We should do the same. We should have those discussions. We should have those transparency markers. So that way, when you say, what's HomeSirens? Well, HomeSirens is a beefed up computer. This little box right here is pretty much a laptop. It has 8 gig of memory, a 60 gig solid state drive, 2.4 quad core PC inside of it. This thing is a monster. Now, why is it a monster? Because it has an artificial intelligence engine that's going to read your internet in real time and write blocking rules in real time. And it reports everything up to a cloud centralized, where my team can now manage and see exactly what is the AI writing. On top of that, we provide you, the end user, your own local dashboard. So you can look at HomeSirens and see exactly what HomeSirens is seeing. We expose everything underneath. We actually have close to 16 databases worth of information that if you really want to go on and see exactly what's happening, by all means, you can. We have full transparencies, therefore you know exactly what we know.
Yeah, I love that. It's so cool, Eric, but part of being a podcast host means sometimes I get to play the other side of the aisle, and I would imagine how many listeners are tuning in and they're thinking, Eric, who cares about my Wi-Fi? Who's trying to attack me? I'm just, a no-name person on the internet. Let's talk about the reality of the threats that we all face and how realistic they all are that we face them.
They're real and they are definitely plentiful, right? So I get it, and I really do, and I promise you, everybody would love to use the internet without problems. And what are the problems? The problems are the hackers are the idiots, right? But the reality is this: hackers make money. There's a GDP. Actually, there's a GDP article that was released probably maybe a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago, where hackers are profiting money. Even ransomware, a virus, has been able to profit money. It's stealing money from people by locking up their data and forcing them to pay to get their data unlocked. And it's been successful time and time and time again. And so to say that, hey, I shouldn't care. Yeah, I know you shouldn't care, but they don't care if you don't care. And that's kind of the problem, is that you have people actively after you. And because you exist and you are on the internet and you have a name, a face, an identity, congratulations, you're a target. Now, the sad thing is that these people are not, always added on the keyboard, 24/7. No, they're smart too. So they actually have software applications. Actually, the underworld and the hacker world has gotten so great that now they have hacking as a service. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations. Hackers now have services, and now they offer their hacking services to other hackers, or maybe not a hacker. Maybe it could be a competitor, or maybe your best friend Susie, who doesn't like you no more, and now she wants to attack you as well. These are the things that exist. These are the things that are accessible to other people to use against anybody they would want to. Whether it's a business, whether it's a small business, or whether it's a person, you're going to be a target. And I know, I get it. You don't want to care. I understand. And that's why I'm here with this solution to really help you keep on not caring. Because again, even my cybersecurity friends, when they come home, they don't want to do cybersecurity when they're at the house. I understand that. I'm pretty much the only person that I know of that I'm on this, cybersecurity front 24/7. I'm always in this world just because I love it so much. It's entertaining. It's mind-boggling by understanding the method of hacks that are happening. I mean, who would ever thought that somebody could call in like tech support PC and say, hey, let me remote a computer, and then people actually allowing other people to remote in their computer. And it's happening every day.
Yeah, it's so true. Erik, what I really appreciate about your message and the way that you show up in the world is because you have such a deep-rooted passion for this and genuine, it seems to me, both on air and off air, a love of all things cybersecurity. It just shines through in the way that you educate. That's what I really like about it, is that you're just really realistic about the things that we face and the things that we should be thinking about. Along those lines, I would imagine that a lot of people feel false senses of security in very different ways. One of those ones I'm going to call out because they're very prevalent in the podcasting world. We've gotten many offers for potential sponsorships on this show, and they sponsor a lot of other shows, is VPNs. VPN software is abundant now, and obviously it's incredibly affordable. Talk to us about VPNs, because a lot of people will think that's the solution. Erik, I'm covered.
Sure, not a problem. Listen, I love VPNs. VPNs are great. And for the common person who doesn't know, what is a VPN? Well, a VPN is kind of like your own little bubble inside of this world. So think of yourself and putting yourself into a bubble, right? And now you're in a bubble, and when you walk out your house, you're in a bubble. So that means whoever wants to get to you has to go through the bubble. That's kind of like a VPN does, right? Takes your information, puts in a bubble, and puts it over the internet. So it basically rides in that bubble. But the problem is, on the VPN and in technology, that bubble is only so big. It's a small bubble. Right, so that's one small problem, is that in some cases, depending upon how much information or size you need, that VPN might be too small to handle everything, right? So that's the first issue. Second issue on a software application, and this is, again, comes down towards understanding what the hardware performance and details are, is that the application of a VPN is very, very resource intensive, because what you're saying is you're going to have an active bubble from one place to another place continuously on 24/7 while you have it on. So that means it's going to take a lot of your computing power and everything else. So this now asks the question, well, where could a software like this be installed? Technically, a VPN can only be installed on mobile applications or desktops or laptops. Now, the common question I always ask people, I said, well, what about your TV? Have you ever seen your VPN installed on a TV? They said, no. I said, exactly. What about your refrigerator? No. Exactly. What about your oven? No. Smart car? No. Okay. So now you start to understand that there's so many other things, smart devices, IoT, they just don't support it. They're not built that way. They're not designed. We never looked at the Internet of Things and all these awesome technologies to say, hey, let's put some security around it just in case somebody wants to take my lights and then flood the lights or turn them on so bright that they burn out. We never thought of those things, but these things are happening because you have other creative people that are able to find these little holes in technologies and exploit them for their purposes.
Yeah, it's so true. Gosh, as soon as you started listing the devices, I was like, of course that's the answer to the question. You're right. I've got a VPN on all my computers that I personally use, but I mean, security cameras, smart lights, so many of the things that you've already listed. Heck, the podcast studio. I've got one fancy smart button. I push one button and lights, neon signs, everything starts turning on. I can't install anything on those. They're just piggybacking off of my home Wi-Fi. So, Erik, I thought I was asking you a somewhat nuanced question, but what a simple answer from you. I really love it there because it's so revealing about the limitations of VPNs while also acknowledging when I'm in a coffee shop, of course it makes sense to have a VPN on my laptop. So that's super helpful. I want to bring something that we talked about off air into our on-air conversation, because you and I both were geeking out a little bit about artificial intelligence, and obviously it's very much baked into HomeSirens. Obviously in the business world we focus a lot on the good aspects of AI, but at the same time it's introducing some very new risks for people. How is AI factoring into the world of cybersecurity?
Ooh, I think AI has impacted cybersecurity in a lot of different ways. Number one, AI has gave people a false sense of sharing and understanding what they can share versus what they can't. And I say that because when people are uploading their presentations, and maybe they're going to do something for the board or for the finance or for the HR, and they start putting in stats inside of an AI engine. As soon as that AI engine processes that, we have a problem. Because in most cases, in most machine language learning models, we don't know exactly where all that data goes and where the data flows. In most cases, I hate to say this, in SaaS solutions, there's a lot of API calls that people don't even realize, or even to write down and put into a low-level design document to say, oh yeah, we know exactly that's going to touch this cloud, but this cloud is quarantined. It doesn't work like that. And so a lot of cases, the AI in itself is really presenting a lot of risk, from PII data being exposed to possibly strategies being exposed to possibly your business, your visions being exposed. And this becomes so hard to contain, because now you're talking about trying to get into an apparatus that technically is going to have some areas that is going to be lock and key. Microsoft is not going to allow you to connect into Copilot to do your incident response. It's just not going to happen. Right? But should you kind of look at the code and see exactly what it's going to do with that data? Yeah, you probably should, because you're going to need to understand where it goes. Because depending upon the country, depending upon the state, depending upon the compliance, you could be looking at anywhere between a couple $100,000 worth of fines to a couple million. I mean, it can go anywhere. And so that's one thing I think it definitely presents, is just a false sense of sharing. Secondly, I think it really puts out there almost a false belief that AI can take a use case and correctively formulate and develop a solution. The problem with that is because with most use cases, the hidden variable is emotions. And emotions come into the play because people have personalities, people have motivations, and people have wishes too. AI does not account for any of those things because it does not care. So therefore, when you're looking at a situation where a person needs to have a solution coded in such a fashion, but work in this meaningful way, typically AI is not going to make that marker. Why? Because AI is designed to get to the solution fast. As soon as it finds the solution, it stops. But then the question begs, is that the only solution? No, because I think we find in life, there are many ways to get to the solution. In some cases, it becomes almost a laziness effect if we stop at one. Why stop at one? We should continue on to see what else exists and what else is out there. Maybe there is a better alternative. But again, if we don't go forward, then we will never know. So there's a lot of areas where AI is kind of putting a burden on cybersecurity, presenting more work, presenting more fallacies, and it's going to have to be corrected by the industry as a whole and not the sum of a few.
Yeah, it's such interesting considerations that, I mean, you're raising really so many different topics even throughout our short conversation here today. One thing that I always love getting inside the mind of from people like you within the cybersecurity world is you actually introduced me to something I've never heard of, hacking as a service. What I'm fascinated by is so much of your job is to keep your finger on the pulse of what hackers are doing. And obviously here we're an entrepreneurial podcast. Everyone's thinking, obsessing, I would say, about how much we can use AI to help us. Guess who else is doing that? Hackers. Hackers are also using it. You and I talked off the air about the ability to clone voices. My goodness, we can do it in literally less than 10 minutes these days. And of course, hackers are going to start leveraging that. Erik, how much of your job is thinking like a hacker? How do you get into the minds of them? How do you stay on top of all that stuff? Because that's how you are proactively protecting your customers and clients from those potential threats as well, evolving threats as well. I'll add that word in.
Yeah, I would say honestly, it's consistent. I mean, it's continuous. It never stops, and I would say that kind of goes along with just learning in general, right? If you're not learning, then you're not really growing. And in the hacking world and technology, because it moves so fast, there's no way in this world you're gonna ever master it. It's not gonna happen. Impossible, because there's so much going on that it would honestly, it's just not, right? So there are things that you can always learn, things to always keep up on, which is important. Now, the areas where I start to think about is that I start to look at what happened in the past, what transpired in the past, what were the variables that allow those things to happen. Like for an example, and I don't want to put companies on blast, but in case there was a company way back in the day in 2007 that got majorly hacked, being a retail company, you understand the methodology, start to learning the inside work of, it was a phishing campaign, it was an email, it was a link, and it led to this, it led to that. Well, that type of information starts to become more prevalent as you start to read more storylines of those situations happening to other companies. And that really helps me to say, okay, well, now that we know that phishing and false emails is a thing, now I can start to creatively, if you think about, well, what else could I fake? I could fake a text message. I could fake a text message. So what we're seeing today, now we're seeing the same type of campaign going from email down to text messages. Right. So I think once you start to understand like how things are working and start to realize that, hey, there's money being made. And that's another thing, too, is that there's a ton of money, just gobs of money being stolen. Hackers are living it up right now. I kid you not. Nation states living it up. I mean, North Korea has stolen a lot of cryptocurrency. I'm just throwing it out there. Right. So with these things at play, it's just now thinking of, okay, what's coming down the pipeline? How can we start to not just look at this for what it can do, but what can we do with it as well? What are the other things that we can do with it? Is there something else I can do with it? I don't know. I mean, these are the questions that we need to start to ask. And again, it becomes a critical thinking area where it's like, do you really want to start to ask those questions? In some cases, people don't care. They become a little bit, numb to it until it really hits them in an impact of, oh no, I lost everything. Yeah, yes, because you should have been paying attention a long time ago because they cloned your voice and you thought you needed not to care because you weren't a target. Well, guess what? You're Ariel and now you're Little Mermaid and now they stole your voice. So what are you going to do, little Ariel?
Yeah, it's so true, Eric. Actually, I'm glad you called out. We've all seen phishing emails, and I feel like that's a threat that we all hopefully inherently understand and can spot at this point. Obviously, email service providers like Gmail are getting better at throwing those emails into spam. Still not perfect. Some still sneak by, inevitably. But you called out text messages, and that to me feels like a frontier that is currently here and poses a very real threat. I see it especially with my parents, is that my parents are convinced that these unknown numbers are texting them because they're really good texts, to be honest. A lot of times it's like, hey, we haven't caught up in forever. Do you have time for a coffee soon? That's a text that your friend would send you. That's not the text that a hacker would send you. And so it is that evolution of threats, evolution of approaches that I think about. I mean, I split test everything from a marketing perspective. I use AI. Now I don't have to think of all these variations. I can just have AI riff on what I put in. Of course, hackers are doing that to generate millions of messages that sound like they're from a friend. So, Eric, I think this episode has sufficiently scared people while also showing the positive way that we can start to take control of all this stuff. And fortunately, there's amazing entrepreneurs like you out there that are building great solutions to protect us in different ways. So before we let you go, though, I want to pick on the mind of Eric, the fellow entrepreneur. I always ask this question at the end of every episode, and that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Obviously, we talked so much about cybersecurity in today's episode, but we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and you are one of us. So what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave listeners with?
You know what? I just want to leave one piece of advice, and that is, don't stop. If you honestly believe what you're doing is going to lead to a positive impact for the right reasons, and you're doing it for those reasons, the money will follow. In the Marines, we always say, pay attention to the details. Everything else will fall into place. And that's really my advice for you, is that don't stop. Do it for the right reasons. Everything will fall into the right place.
Yes, such good advice. And Eric, your longevity within the cybersecurity space, your commitment to protecting your customers, and all the work that you've done, and I would probably guess that you're spending way more outside of your working hours just living inside of this world because you love it. And that's what makes you so articulate when you talk about these topics. All of that is just a testament to the fact that we need to keep going. As entrepreneurs, it's never going to be easy. Everything's always going to be changing. So I love seeing what you're doing with HomeSirens Sirens. I'm very excited for listeners to check it out. Listeners, especially if you weren't consuming this episode in video format, if you were just tuning in, you're going to want to see this device with your own eyes. So I'm going to kick it back to you, Erik. Drop those links on us for listeners who want to check out HomeSirens and all the great things that you're up to. Drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Listen, from here, all you have to do is go to www.homesirens.com, and that is it. All the information, all the links, even if you're looking to purchase a service of your home sirens yourself, we have plenty of options, which allows anybody from a financial perspective to play into. We're right there.
Yes, super easy, Erik. Of course, making it as easy as possible. HomeSirens.com. Listeners, on top of that, to make it even easier, you know that we're dropping that link down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Otherwise, Erik, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Appreciate the questions. Entrepreneurs, go get it.